lively you are this morning on a cold morning. But we want to start with prayer. And Jeff, would you lead us, please?
We ask that you would open our minds and our hearts as we prepare to study your word and hear your word preached later on. We just ask you to guide those who are instructing us. In Jesus' name.
Amen. So, got to remember 2 weeks back now, because we were gone last week, why is partiality or favoritism not a good thing? You can come up with at least 2 reasons that we looked at last time. So everybody knows what partiality and favoritism is? Right? So why is that not a good thing, especially in a church?
Because it causes division.
Okay, it sure does. What was the main thing that James points out about it?
Not made distinctions among yourself and become judges with evil motives.
Okay, so it's about becoming judges and judging based on what? Outward appearance. So there be strike one. Man looks on the outward appearance. God looks on the heart. So that's one reason it's wrong. But what's the other thing? It's kind of the main reason James brings it up and goes into where he goes. Okay, the royal law is love your neighbor as yourself. Partiality is not loving your neighbor as yourself. That's why it's wrong. And then, how many laws do we need to break to be considered lawbreakers? 1. All right, so that's a good Awana verse. What are some things James has to say about faith that lacks works? Faith without works. There's about 4 things he has to say about faith that doesn't produce works. It's useless. Thank you, Lois. What else? It's dead. What else? Maybe verse 19, for example.
It's just the same as the demons.
Yeah, no better than the demons have, and they tremble, and most people that say they believe in God don't tremble. And then how about, and this you'd have to draw from the phrase, but it can't save. He asks rhetorically, can that faith save him? And he assumes the answer is no, that kind of faith can't save. So do you remember the relationship between faith, works, and salvation, and why James and Paul are not contradicting each other, but actually complementing with an E each other? Remember how that worked? Excuse the play on words. So, little visual aid for those of you. I had some fans in the library just this morning. So glad I was cutting this out with this. Okay, so here is F for faith plus W for works yields or produces salvation. Yay or nay? Nay. How do we know that? Like what books in the Bible, for example? Galatians and Romans especially. So this is Paul's, he's going to war against this approach. Faith plus your performance, faith plus you being XYZ. Christ is not enough, it's Christ plus, faith plus. So that's Paul's big baby. How about faith minus works yields salvation? What did we just see? James says that doesn't save. So that's James over here. I don't know what kind of food they got on this whiteboard. So the real biblical way is faith yields or produces salvation plus works. Okay? It's on this side of the equation. The works are over here. And if they're not, there's something suspect, if not just wrong, about the claim to know God and have a relationship with him. So, any questions on that? Okay, that is huge. We have to remember that. So, can you think of a sentence that the reformers came up with, for example, that summarizes all that in one sentence? Go ahead, Angela. Okay. We are saved by faith alone, but the faith that saves is never alone, but always accompanied by love and good deeds, love and good works. So faith alone, but it's never alone. Genuine, real faith, not demonic faith or dead faith or useless faith, always produces love and good works. So any comments or questions on what we saw in chapter 2? All right, let's do James chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Somebody please read those out loud.
Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness, for we are stubborn in many ways. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man. He also to bridle his whole body.
Okay, thank you. So why does James say we shouldn't be too eager to become teachers? Right. We're more accountable. So, little survey here, get your hands ready. How many of us can say, my mouth has never gotten me into trouble. I've never said anything I wish I hadn't said? Just go ahead and raise your hands. Okay, that's James' point right here. All of us stumble when it comes to our tongues. Every single one of us. And so one way to think of it, especially now that it's winter, is ice skating. Okay? You start out as a beginner, teach a little kid, they wipe out all the time. You get a little better over time, you wipe out less, but you still wipe out some. But even if you watch the Olympics or professional skaters, they still wipe out. Okay? And the same is true in the Christian life. As believers, we're making progress, but we never reach perfection in this life, including, if not especially, in controlling our tongues. This thing will get us in trouble all the time. So any comments or questions so far? And he's already said we're to be quick to hear and slow to speak, but he's going to come back and talk even more about the tongue. He also said that true religion is about being able to control your tongue. So this is the third time he's circling back on this tongue is something we have to pay attention to. Would somebody please read chapter 3, verses 3 through 5? Chapter 3, 3 through 5.
Now if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, we direct their entire body as well. Look at the ships also, though they are so great and are driven by strong winds, are still directed by a very small rudder, wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things.
Plus the rest of that verse, please.
Oh, see how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire.
Okay, so what's the point of all three illustrations James just gave about horses, ships, and fires? What's the point?
It only takes a little bit.
Right. So the tongue, even though it's small, has the capacity for all kinds of things way out of proportion to its size. So let's look at Proverbs 18:21. Proverbs 18. Somebody please read 21.
Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit.
Death and life in the power of the tongue. So what would be some examples of the power of words to make a long-term impact? Why would Solomon say life and death are in the power of the tongue?
One of my favorite movies is The King's Speech. And that's a movie about the King of England.
Okay.
He had to give a speech to people to encourage everybody to be holding strong.
Oh, okay, during the war? Okay, huh.
So, I don't know, that's just one I
Sure.
think of. You know, people have to be encouraged sometimes, and words can do that.
Sure, sure. So some rather big ones would be when a couple says, I do. Those are just two words, but it's a lifelong commitment, a lifelong impact and consequences. Or when a judge says either guilty or not guilty, the future of that person is going to be greatly changed one way or the other. Or parents, for example, if a parent is telling their kids, I love you, and saying encouraging things to them, much different outcome of you're a pain, you'll never amount to anything, just, bad news. That kid's going to go a certain direction compared to if there's love and encouragement. So those would just be some examples of the power of the tongue for good or evil. So any comments or questions so far? Okay, let's go to 6 through 8 of James chapter 3. Would somebody please read those?
And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set amongst our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life, and is set on fire by hell. For every species of beast and bird, of reptiles and creatures of the sea are tamed and has been tamed by the human race, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison.
So why does James use such strong language about the tongue? Is he exaggerating? What's he trying to tell us?
This is really serious.
Yeah. Yeah, so Jerry Bridges wrote a book called Respectable Sins, and we tend to think sins of the tongue are relatively minor, kind of just not big deals. But things like complaining or gossip or snarky words are to be taken seriously and not just casually. So that's his point, that there's, again, just so much damage that can happen with this thing flapping. Okay, any comments or questions on that?
I was thinking like the crowds who sent Jesus who were crying, crucify. Who was their words like that Pilate listened to?
Good point. Never thought of that one. Thank you. Any other comments or observations? All right, let's read 9 through 12.
With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water.
Okay, thank you. So what's James' point in these illustrations? He likes illustrations, doesn't he? What's his point?
I think that the tongue can either bring life or it can bring death.
Okay, good.
Because in one sentence you can be praising somebody, but you can be speaking like you're praising somebody, but back here in the back of the mind, you're cursing that same person at the same time. So you're doing two things at once because you're one minute you're praising somebody, the next minute you're tongue is very powerful,
Sure.
because it brings life and death both.
Yeah, there, I thought somebody over here was.
It's also pointing out the inconsistency.
Yeah, just the sheer inconsistency. Yeah. Yeah. So his first one is you bless God. So in 45 minutes, we're going to use our tongues to bless God, sing songs about Christ coming to earth. But before the afternoon is over, at least one of us might use our tongue to be blasting our spouse or one of our kids or somebody else, somebody in traffic or at the store. I mean, so it's like, what is this thing? What's the problem here? So it's a problem. So before we look at James' next topic, a couple other verses about the tongue. Let's go to Matthew 12. Oh, and I just thought, Angie, when you were saying about that, we've learned from people who have lived in the South that you can do the same thing at the same time with the phrase, "Oh, bless your heart," because that sounds like you're blessing, like literally you're saying "bless your heart," but that can be used like, you know, like "you dummy" or whatever. So
I look a little different on that too. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I think the problem in America, Christian culture, church, whatever you want to call it, is I know people that sit there on Sundays or Wednesdays or whenever you're in church praising God, and then if you work with them or see them out there, you know, using foul language, dropping F-bomb, all those things, people watch that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've seen it, I've heard it,
Mm-hmm.
and I've challenged it, that what we say, even in those words, those curse words, I say, oh, it's no big deal. It is a big deal,
mm-hmm.
because we're doing exactly what James said
Not to do.
shouldn't be doing. He said, hey, you can't praise Jesus one minute and drop F-bombs the next.
Right. Thank you. Somebody have Matthew 12, 33 and 34.
Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you're evil? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Okay, so this is such a key verse. The problem is not just what comes out of our mouth, it's what comes out of our mouth is the fruit of what's in our heart. So if there's nastiness coming out, there's nastiness inside. So fixing the words and sounding nicer or sugary or pretend, whatever, that doesn't change the heart. The heart is the issue, says Jesus. And it's going to come out good or bad depending on what's inside, not just change the outside. Does that make sense? Okay, let's go to Psalm 141. Psalm 141. Would somebody read the first 3 verses?
Lord, I call upon you, hasten to me, give ear to my voice when I call to you. Let my prayer be counted as incense before you, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips.
Okay, so David recognizes my willpower, my self-control, quote unquote, is not going to be enough to guard my tongue from trouble. I need God himself to set a guard over it and to watch over my lips, because left to myself, I'll let a lot of things out that I shouldn't. Also, Ephesians 4:29. Ephesians 4:29. Somebody read that, please.
Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear.
Okay, so there's 4 criteria there before we open our mouths. And again, hopefully if you've been a Christian at least a little while, the unwholesome words part, like Steve was mentioning, that's taken care of. You're not done just because you don't swear or use bad language, okay? There's 3 other pieces to that instruction in 429. So what are they? Only if it's blank, blank, and blank. What's the first one? Okay, what's edification mean? Building up and encouraging instead of discouraging and tearing down. Right. So 1 Thessalonians 5:11 reminds us of that. Would somebody read that? 1 Thessalonians 5:11.
Therefore, encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing.
Okay, so in Awana we used to sing, encourage one another and build each other up. But the second verse is encourage one another, don't tear each other down. So it's all included. It's only to be built up, not for tearing down. What's the second piece to evaluate before we open our mouths? That's coming for sure. In fact, well, let's just do that one. We don't have to do it in order. So grace to those who hear. Let's look at Colossians 4:6.
Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person.
Okay, thank you. So what does it mean to be gracious in our speech, or that our speech is always with grace?
I've always thought of that verse in terms of like when you're unsure of something you say in the present company is going to be appropriate or not, don't. You have to ask the question, kind of a thing. It's like maybe everyone will be okay with this, but like if you're not sure, then don't. Or if it's a situation where I don't have a problem with what I'm about to say, but someone else might, I don't take the liberty of saying, well, I'm cool with it, so let's do it instead. I give grace to someone who may be offended by it, even though I'm not.
Okay.
Based on like what I believe the scripture says on it or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the right.
I mean, I think, yeah, could be. Any other thoughts on what it would mean to speak with grace, or that our words are gracious? Kindness, right? So Jesus was full of grace and truth. So everything he said was always full of grace as well as truth. We're called to speak the truth in love. So kindness, gracious, as opposed to harsh or unkind. And then what's the third piece or fourth piece? Okay, so appropriate timing. Proverbs 15:23. Proverbs 15:23.
A man has joy in an apt answer, and how delightful is a timely word.
Okay, timely word at the right time. Or Proverbs 25:11. Proverbs 25:11.
Like apples of gold in settings of silver is a word spoken in right circumstances.
Okay, so that's at least supposes there might be wrong circumstances or the wrong time to try to speak them. So just one small example in our marriage is after evening, like as the evening goes, neither Angela or I are like ready to do big planning. Like, we're going to plan this trip. How are we going to plan this event or whatever? It's just like, can we talk about it in the morning? You know, it's a good thing to talk about. We need to talk about it, but the timing is off. If I try to bring up, hey, honey, we need to, whatever, it's like, can we talk about it in the morning? And which is a fair request, but that's what that phrase is about. According to the need of the moment, be sensitive to the need of the moment. And if your spouse or your kid or whoever you're talking to just needs some rest or needs a break or needs whatever, it can wait. So not unwholesome, always with grace and kindness, always on the appropriate time, and what's the other one? Always building up and encouraging. So that's a high standard, isn't it? And it says only. So that's only what's supposed to come out of our mouth. So an acronym that we used back when we were in Ephesians for Sunday school, but we probably need to review. And even if you remember it, James 1:22 says, "Be ye doers of the word, not hearers only." So we're going to help refresh your memories with the acronym THINK. Think before you speak. Anybody want to guess or remember what the T is? Is it true? What's the H? Helpful. What's the I? We had multiple versions for I. The one we kind of landed on was important, but you can throw in other ones if you like that one. Other I one's better. How about the N? Is it necessary? Sometimes you don't just have to say anything, right? Just let it go. And last but not least, K. Kind. It goes along with gracious, right? Say kind. So again, that just be a little exercise. Think before you speak, before you open this thing. And it gets you in trouble, like James 3 says it does so often. Kind of walk through that, or walk through Ephesians 4:29. Is it true? And all those, is it edifying? Is it gracious? Is it the right time to say it? Those would be good for us to get in the habit of doing those things. And James 3 will be less true of us, right? Okay, so any comments or questions on the tongue before we move on? All right, let's go to chapter 3 of James. Would somebody please read 13 through 18? 13 through 18.
Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every evil thing. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. And the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace.
Okay, thank you. So James is all about showing, not just claiming. You know, show me your works. Show me your... And so here he's saying, if you think you're wise and understanding, show me that by the gentleness of wisdom. There's a gentleness that's associated with wisdom that is going to be the test, if it's really the right kind of wisdom. And so he mentions two kinds of wisdom. So what are the two sources, two different sources of wisdom? From above. Should be heaven or God. And what's the other kind? Three adjectives. Yeah. Ouch. Demonic. I mean, he pulled out the big guns quick, didn't he? I mean, just earthly and natural would be bad enough. But again, he already said the tongue is set on fire by hell. And now he's going there again as far as that other kind of wisdom, the kind of wisdom that isn't from above, is actually demonic. Which is a very strong statement. So what are the characteristics of the earthly or demonic wisdom, and what does it produce?
Well, the earthly is limited to earth, here on earth, obviously.
Right. So he mentions a couple things that are present when earthly wisdom is working, and then what those things produce. Yeah, jealous. So what's jealousy?
Being envious of something that somebody else has.
Right. Good. And then what would you say selfish ambition would be?
Climbing to the top at all costs.
Okay, just looking out for myself, self-promotion, self-advancement, self. What does ESV have for selfish ambition? Same, okay. So that's an ugly combo, selfish ambition and jealousy. And then what are two things that produces, or what's also there when those are there?
Disorder and every vile practice.
Yeah, so that's bad news. Okay. What about the characteristics of the wisdom that's from above? He gives quite a list. What are some things he says about the wisdom from above? It's pure, so it's free from blemish or from the sins that were mentioned earlier. What else? Peaceable. So peace-loving and peacemaking. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. What else? Gentle. Not harsh or hard, but tender and considerate and kind. Jesus said, blessed are the gentle or the meek. He also said, blessed are the pure in heart. So actually, these are going to follow the Beatitudes. Brett's already on that. What else? Yeah, reasonable or open to reason. King James said, easily entreated. I like that phrase. Easily entreated. You can appeal to a person and say, oh, let's talk about this. Let's be calm and just work it through. And they're easily entreated and like, nope, my mind's made up and I'm not going to change. What else?
Merciful.
Yeah, full of mercy or merciful. So compassionate response to those in need and tenderness to those. So blessed are the merciful. What else? It's full of good fruit or the good works. Yeah, so fruit of the Spirit, the outward evidence of the inner reality of the Spirit indwelling us. What else? Okay, good. So, without hypocrisy or sincerity, so it's real. It's not faking it. So what are the outcomes of that kind of wisdom that comes from above? So the source is God, comes from above. Here's the characteristics, which all sound very desirable. I mean, who doesn't want that compared to jealousy and ambition and evil, disorder, and what was the other thing in the disorder, every evil thing. So that's bad news. And this is offered. What does it produce? What's the outcome? Okay. Which also seems to include peace. So yeah, it's a tricky sentence. So it seems to be the seed is wisdom, and it's planted in, how did I write that? I tried to, how that worked. Okay, the seed of wisdom is sown by peacemaking people, and it produces righteousness and more peace. So you see the sequence? Again, the word order is just a little tricky, but the seed whose fruit is righteousness. So what's the seed? I think it's wisdom, because we've been talking about wisdom for the last 6 verses or whatever. So wisdom is the seed. Who's planting the seed? People who are sowing it in peace. So peacemaking people are sowing the seed of wisdom, and the outcome is the fruits or the harvest of righteousness and more peace. Does that make sense? Any comments or questions or thoughts on that? So isn't that what we want? In our homes, in our churches, that's what we want. Righteousness, peace, wisdom, tongue under control, good things. So any comments or questions on that section? All right, well then let's go to just the transition. We won't get too far into this, but so the last word of chapter 3 is peace. And remember, chapter divisions aren't added for 1,000 years or more after James wrote this. So the very next thing he says after the word peace, sown in peace by those who make peace, he talks about something else. So let's go to chapter 4, 1 and 2. Chapter 4, verse 1 and 2.
What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask.
Okay, so isn't that sad? We just talk about peace, peace on earth, right? We're all singing peace on earth. That's a great thing. And here he goes, oh, real life is there's conflicts and quarrels and fights he's talking to believers. Conflicts between husbands and wives, between parents and children, between siblings and siblings, between other relatives in the extended family, between people in the church, between neighbors, conflict all over the place. There's no peace on earth at this point. There's still quarrels and conflicts. So what is the source of all that conflict? If you trace it down to the root. Go ahead, Jane. Looked like you were going to say something. No. Looked like I saw your lips moving like you're ready for that one. Okay. What's the source? Yeah, so desires or passions in our hearts, right? That's what's the problem. Selfish desires. Why would that cause quarrels and conflict?
Selfish ambition, and I can see how that's often one person desires one thing for themselves, but it puts other people's wishes below that.
Okay. Yeah, so if I'm understanding this right, I want what I want. There's my selfish desires. You want what you want. And so somebody's standing in the way of what we want. Hence the conflict. Right? If everybody just cooperated with my agenda and my schedule, I would be conflict free. And so would you. Right? Conflict doesn't happen when everybody's just cooperating. Conflict happens when somebody isn't cooperating, at least according to my definition of cooperate. So you're standing in the way of me getting what I want. That's a conflict. And that's, James says, that's where it comes from. And again, we won't get, well, let's just do 1 through 3. So instead of trying to get what we want by getting what we want, what should we be doing instead? There's something we want that we don't have, so we have conflicts about it, but what's that better alternative? Ask God. 4:2 is a great verse about prayer. You have not because you ask not. Fill in the blank. You need more this, that, or the other thing. Have you asked? Ask not. And then sometimes you can ask and still not receive. So he also addresses that in chapter 4, verse 3. Somebody read verse 3.
You ask and do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures.
Okay. So prayer can go sideways by not praying at all and just trying to get it myself instead of asking God for it. But even if I'm asking God for it, how can, just because I ask God, why isn't that a guarantee he's going to give it to me? According to verse 3. Right. Based on what? What's wrong about asking in 3?
Just for your own desires.
Yeah. Wrong motive. So the simplest one would be, okay, so Calvin did a presentation for his work this week. If he's praying, Lord, bless this so I will look really good and get a lot of pat on the backs and attaboys and, maybe even get a promotion or a raise, so make this go well so I get all this, that would be selfish motives. Okay? God might do all those other things, but if the reason I'm asking for those is for those things, God is under no obligation to grant it. God isn't in the habit of blessing us so we look good.
Sounds like Romans 1, changing the Lord and being comfortable.
Yeah, I want the glory. Yeah, so that I'll be made much of instead of God be made much of. Or it could be other things too, just so my life is easier, or so my life is this, or so my life is that. And not necessarily ideal motives. And so James just says, check your heart, because that can be where the prayers are going wrong if your heart isn't right in terms of your motive. Calvin?
Yeah, let's also go back to chapter 3, where like a selfish ambition.
Yeah.
Like the earthly wisdom.
Yep, definite connection there. Right. Any other thoughts, questions, observations, comments?
I also wonder if like the link between verse 2 and verse 3 about if it can have this, if there's this element of like forcing something to happen, really wanting something to happen because it's your way. So you quarrel with other people and then I wonder if verse 3 can also be this element of like forcing something to happen, not really trusting God, that you want God's will.
Yeah, we definitely can pray, my will be done, not your will be done. That can be a wrong motive. Any other thoughts or connections that you see?
Ties in with Psalm 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. So it's, if we're focusing on God and delighting in God, then He's going to shape our hearts, and then He's happy to give us what He wants to give us away. And we're happy to receive it because God has shaped our hearts to want just that.
Okay, good. Good way to do that verse. Okay, any other thoughts before we wrap it up for this morning? Okay.
Who was the original audience? Is the early Christian church?
Yeah, so it's apparently Jewish background believers that are scattered throughout the Roman Empire after the dispersion. Remember, after Jerusalem, persecution broke out over the stoning of Stephen. Everybody left. So he says to the 12 tribes who are dispersed abroad, so in verse 1. So it's Jewish background believers, first generation believers, who still have some sanctification needed, just like all of us, and we're confused about the relationship of faith and works, because he spends a lot of time talking about that and what's real faith in Christ compared to something less than that. Any other thoughts before we wrap it up? Okay. Well, Rodney, would you close us in prayer?
Father, we thank you for the truth of your word, and we ask that you would sink it deep into our hearts. Be doers of this word and not hearers only. We go about our week here. Ask that you would bless the service that's coming up, that our worship would be pleasing to you, and be with Pastor Brad as he delivers the message, that we be sanctified to all, and just receive honor today, Lord. In Jesus' name.
Amen.